21st of May 2018, 7 p.m. It was a Monday evening. And how many people are going to show up? So we bought so many biscuits. But the reality was that we were just hoping that one other person would walk into that room and sit down at that table with us and tell us about their grief.
We feel very honoured to be in the presence of a 28-year-old man. For our viewers, listeners, that is incorrect. It was a little joke we had.
Yeah. We won't reveal his real age. So this is the lovely Ben May, who you're a founder of the New Normal charity. And the New Normal charity offers a completely free, non-judgmental peer-to-peer support for mainly grief, is it? Or for lots of different things?
Yeah, so it's for bereaved adults, but we also have some spaces for mental health as well.
Okay. So tell us a bit about yourself, Ben. How did you start the charity?
So the New Normal was founded in 2018, but really it began a few years earlier. So I was at work one day on Portobello Road. I was a barber, have been for 23 years. And I was at work. This young man walked into my barber shop and he sat in my chair. And I began to cut his hair. We'd never met before, didn't know anything about one another, but we immediately connected over music and fashion and lifestyle and also football as well. We're both raised on football terraces by our dads. And after about 20 minutes, this young man, Jack, told me that his dad, Dave, had actually died 2 years previously. And it was a serendipitous moment because my dad, Steve, had just a week before been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. So here we were, these two young men, connecting in a way that we hadn't connected with anyone else. We were just able to talk about what we were experiencing. And at the end of that haircut, Jack and I swapped numbers and we started to text each other a lot and get together, go and watch the football, go and have dinner, go and drink beer. And every single time we were together, our conversations took the same direction. We started off talking about our relationships and we'd talk about football and we'd talk about work, but we'd always come back to the same thing. We'd always come back to our dads. And that was the thing that, really bonded us. It really connected us. We'd talk endlessly about what Jack was going through and what I was going through, what Jack had been through, how he had watched his dad die and how I was in the process of watching my dad die. And it was in those conversations that we really started the foundation of the work that the New Normal does today. And, a couple of years after Jack and I met, after my dad had died, Jack went away to an anxiety retreat. And whilst he was working with one of the counsellors at the retreat, they asked him to complete this this graph thing. It was a circle, and in the circle there were segments, and each segment had a header. So it had friends, family, work, community, whatever else the segments were. When he got to community, he only filled out a small amount. And the counsellor said to him, where's your community? Why have you only filled out a small amount? And Jack then explained that he had me and he had friends. But the community he was missing were more people like me, more people like him who he could speak to about his grief. So he came to me and he said, what do you think? What can we do? Is there any way that we can kind of speak to some other people? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I could see what my friend needed and, I could also see what I needed as well. I felt lonely in my grief at times. My family are wonderful, but it's not always the place that I went to grieve. It's not the place I went to talk about my dad. I had that with Jack. And so I said, yeah, sure, let's do this. And I had been in peer support many years before for anger management. And, whilst I was there, it was a really simple concept. You sit around a table, you drink a cup of tea, you eat some biscuits, and you talk about what you're going through. And I thought, this works. So I said to Jack, why don't we try this? And, Jack said, well, why don't we go to the hospices where our dads died? And to be honest with you, I live in North London and I had no interest in going to either Essex or Southampton. So I was like, absolutely not. Found a community centre in Angel and we picked a date, the 21st of May 2018. 7 p.m. It was a Monday evening. And, we told everyone, we told everybody that we could, every interaction we had, every single client that sat in my chair, we spoke about it on, Jack's Twitter and my Instagram. We just posted constantly talking about it. So many people told us what a great idea it was. And, that night we had no idea how many people would turn up. Jack will tell you that it's the only time that any one of his tweets ever went semi-viral. For some strange reason, it was picked up by National Rail. And when it was retweeted, and all of these people liked it and commented on it and said it's amazing and they wanted to come along and be a part of what we were doing. And so we were like, well, how many people are going to be there? How many people are going to show up? So we bought so many biscuits. But the reality was that we were just hoping that one other person would walk into that room and sit down at that table with us and tell us about their grief. And by 7:05 on the 21st of May, 2018, 5 other people had walked into the room and had sat down around that table, and Jack said, "Good evening and welcome to Good Grief. This is your opportunity to speak honestly and openly without judgment or expectation." And for the next 2 hours, that's what we did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Really is amazing.
We do find that people who have had the same experience, they seem to be able to talk to you if you've had, something similar. There's no replacement for that. People can't understand grief unless they've been through it themselves.
I think even with a lot of education around grief and bereavement and, what are the right things to say to somebody, actually, more often than not, what we crave is that human connection, which is, exactly how I am feeling.
Without words.
Yeah. And I don't think that can easily be replaced in any other sort of format. That doesn't mean that we can't encourage people and keep teaching them how best to deal with somebody who is bereaved. But I think ultimately that's the forum, isn't it? That's the space we want to be in when we are struggling with our own grief.
Yeah, and I think, it lends itself to any trauma, right? I think a lot of people feel the same, that they want to feel like the person next to them really understands what they're experiencing. And I think that's why the spaces work so well. I think that's why our peer support groups have taken off. I mean, we've hosted, in that 7.5 years, we've hosted 1,500 peer support meetings. That's a vast number of meetings to host. I remember sitting down a couple of years ago in an end of year call with some pretty big charities on the call, and one of the questions that was asked to the group was, what are the things that we've done that year, or one thing we've done that year that we're really proud of? And I won't name the charity, but they said, oh, we're really happy that we've managed to run 4 support groups this year for bereaved adults. And their turnover is tens and tens and tens of millions. And, our turnover is £100,000. And that year alone, we'd hosted over 250 groups. And I think it really speaks to the needs of people. People want to feel less isolated. They want to feel connected in their experiences, and to have a place where they can go and sit down, and for somebody else to say, I recognize what you're experiencing. And I think one of the things for me is that we always said that, for every Jack, there is a Ben, right? As if you would find the exact person who would understand everything you were going through. And I think in the very unique circumstances that you do find that person, it's fantastic. But for me, what peer support really is that when you come into that room and you sit and you listen to other people speak, you hear parts of your story in everybody else's. And actually, that's the bit that really connects us to those people and to ourselves, and allows us to better understand who we are, because we just hear parts of our story told over and over and over again. And I think that's the beauty of peer support, and that's the beauty of community and connection.
Definitely. We've definitely found that, haven't we?
100%. And it's quite interesting. Just before we came on this call, we were actually discussing this from a very personal point of view.
Yeah.
So I've lost my dad in the last few weeks, and Carrie's lost her brother. So the irony of us doing a podcast about death and losing to
significant
very
people.
important people. It's just, it makes us want to do this work even more, because our mission is to normalise these conversations, as we've just said, so that people aren't feeling awkward and do have a space in which to do it. But it doesn't always mean, I personally feel I spend a lot of my time appeasing others when they say to me, how are you? How are you doing? And I think, actually, shit. Really shit. But I don't want to burden you with that. So I'm going to say, do you know what? I'm up and down. I'm doing okay. It's all right. I have good days and bad days. And actually, when Carrie and I get together, because we talk about death all
We're
the
always
time,
miserable.
we're actually not. We're really upbeat people.
But we're honest about it.
we've
How
got
shit do you feel today? Like,
crass
Yeah.
humour. Without that, we're nothing. But actually, that it's so vital to be able to connect, as you've got your Ben, as you've said,
Jack.
your Jack, sorry, to your Ben. We have to have that other person. But actually, when we start to expand that circle, we realise that we're not just meeting one, we're meeting many over and over again, and it has that deep, impactful solidarity, doesn't it? That we're missing. And I don't think there are many groups. I mean, I live quite rurally. I'm certainly not in North London. And I would have to travel to a city. You're in a city centre. I mean, I don't know.
I think the beauty of your service is that it's online, isn't it? Anyone can join from anywhere. Because I know my sister-in-law, she does use your service. She signs in regularly to one of your groups. And in fact, I think she wanted to be like a group lead or something at one point. She recommended, she couldn't speak highly enough of the service. And the fact that it's modern, it's digital, anyone can get on wherever they are. You don't need to go to somewhere. Because sometimes even leaving the house when you're in grief is, inconceivable, isn't it? I can't even get out of the house today.
Ben, do you have quite a high uptake of younger people using your service because it's online, or would you say the demographics are quite mixed?
The demographic is really mixed. I think initially, when we first started, it was a younger group of people who would come. Jack and I were also younger as well. It's worth pointing out. So I think, therefore, we attracted a younger demographic. But as we've diversified our spaces and grown as an organisation and can reach further, it's meant that we really do see a wide-ranging group of people using our services. And our partner loss group in particular will see, people from their 20s all the way through to, 70s, 80s, just because they want a space. And partner loss in particular, I think, is a group that, because, okay, so when my dad died, and I think about my stepmom sort of spoke to me about how she was going and using, Facebook groups, and how she was talking to, other widows. And there was some, video calls that she could join, or she could go for coffee mornings, or, she could make friends if she wanted to. And the thing that really struck me about this was that it really suited a specific type of person. It was for women in their 50s, 60s, who had lost a husband. And that was it. Maybe there was the occasional man who had lost his wife. It was catering to really specific gender norms. It was catering to married couples. It was catering to people of a certain age. And it didn't offer a space for anyone who was different. Like, why are we still serving only one type of person? Why are we serving only one demographic? And that's not to say that TNN gets it right all of the time. And to begin with, we certainly didn't. We had one group, and we thought anyone could come into that group, because Jack and I were ignorant to the fact that there were other experiences. And when we started, we wanted it to be positive, uplifting, a space for people to come and share really, happy stuff. That by midway through the first session, it changed. That was out of the window. And by probably the 10th session, we realized that actually, having good relationships wasn't necessarily always the case. So we really quickly saw that different people were having different experiences, but it took us a long time to get to the point of creating spaces for other people and other communities. And when we did, we really saw the change in people who were coming and using our services. So I think it's acknowledging all of the nuances in grief and identity, and recognizing that people feel comfortable in spaces where they are reflected. And so there are services like ours online, but they only suit a really specific demographic.
Assuming that you do secure funding and you continue to grow in the way that you have, it's amazing work you're doing. What's next for you in your vision for the charity? Are you just going to carry on as you are, or have you got anything else that you'd like to sort of conquer?
So I think with TNN, for me at the moment, we've grown at such an exponential rate. You know, we've to deliver the amount of services we have in the short time we have. I think what we need to do and what we have been doing is bringing in some real experience into our board. Just brought in a new chair and a new kind of head of finance, and both of them come with significant experience. You know, we have a really, really, really great board team already, but kind of bringing in that experience is what is going to be really valuable for the new normal to kind of, you know, people talk about sustainable growth, which is a bit, you know, it's a bit of a buzz, right? Sustainable growth. But actually what sustainable growth looks like for us is being able to create, we've created a foundation, but to create a kind of bedrock above that foundation, which allows us to grow again. I think what we've done is we've done that, right? We've exploded a little bit, and we sort of need to take stock of that, settle down, continue with our services, continue with the training that we deliver, but work out how we kind of grow from here. So that's about relationship building. That's about understanding the charity sector and the landscape even better. That's about, really kind of getting in with funders and getting to know, who the right people are for us to speak to, local authority and things like that. And I think that's the key for us. Once we do that, I think we really can create a significant number of services for people, which will go a long, long way to supporting people in immediate crisis. And, one of the things that I've sort of spoken about for a few years is working with whatever is left with the NHS, or in fact with local authority, and creating frontline services for communities, going and teaching people to run groups, training people to run groups. So if you turn up to your doctor and you say to your doctor, I'm in a bit of a crisis, and the doctor says, well, it's 6 or 12 or 18 months waiting list. In fact, actually, there are these groups everywhere that you can tap into that are in person, they're on the phone, they're online, wherever it is, where you can go that day, that afternoon, that evening and sit. Community is the thing that we're really missing in this moment in society, and building community again is deeply important to the survival of people.
Ben, if anybody is watching this or listening and they don't know who you are and they want to access your services, can you tell us how they would do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to our website, which is thenewnormalcharity.org. You can head to our Instagram to find out a little bit more as well, which is TNN Charity. And I think those are probably the two best ways actually to access our services. But if you want to join one of our groups, all you need to do is go onto our website, find our meetings, click on that, select which is right for you, and we'll send you all of the necessary links to join.
And when people join the meetings, if they don't want to talk, are they okay to just listen, or do you encourage people to participate?
So the only thing that we ask of people is that they share a little bit about themselves at the beginning of the meeting. So their name, their pronouns, if they're comfortable to, and why they're there. So it could be as simple as saying, Ben, my dad died in 2015, and that's 2016. Sorry. And that's it. You can be off camera. You can be on camera. We don't pressure people into either of those. We do have community guidelines that are read out at the beginning of the meeting. So we like to believe that our spaces are somewhere where you will feel comfortable to share. But equally, if you're not, then that's absolutely fine. You don't have to. You can just be a participant who sits and listens and takes it in.
Then do you miss hosting meetings? As you said earlier, put out to pasture, do you miss it?
I deliver a lot of training. So I deliver suicide prevention community training, and I also deliver suicide first aid training. And we also have training that we deliver to corporates as well, around kind of leadership. So I deliver a fair bit of training to make sure that we can still access our funding. So I think that takes up a significant amount of my time. And, you know, I see my therapist 4 times a month, and I see my supervisor twice a month. And between all of that, it's probably enough for me. Hosting meetings, it's, you know, I stopped drinking alcohol like 10 years ago, right? I haven't had a drink for about a decade. So people always say to me, oh, will you never have a drink again? And I never tell people I'm sober, you know, just in case I ever am in the right moment where I think, do you know what? I'm going to have a drink. And I think it's the same with hosting. You know, I'll never say I'll never do it again, because if I want to do it, I want to do it. And but I'll do it for me, right? I'll do it for the right reasons. And, you know, it's the same with alcohol. If I'm ever in the right space.
That's good. Yeah. So, I mean, as you probably know, our podcast also is about death and about grief and about life and about loss. But how do you feel about death now? Do you feel differently now, because you sort of deal with a lot of grief and, you know, your whole job revolves around it?
I feel quite comfortable about it. There are two ways for me to think about this, I suppose. I'm very comfortable talking about death. I'm very comfortable experiencing death. I am very comfortable about the idea of my own mortality. I know I'll die, and I'm okay with that. Then there is the other side of death, which is that it is always going to hurt, no matter who it is, you know, when it is, how it is. When I think about my cat, you know, my cat Dave is 7.5. The half is obviously important. But Dave is the first thing that I see every single day. You know, I wake up cuddling him every single morning. And I know when Dave is no longer here and he's not there in the mornings anymore, that's going to break my heart. You know, and so I can be okay with the idea of death and loss and mortality. You know, I can speak about it all the time and I can rationalize it as much as I want. But I also know that when it happens, it's painful and it's hard and it's going to hurt me. But I'm okay with that as well, because I recognize that's a part of the experience. So, yeah, and I guess so that's the two parts of death, the rational side and the irrational side, I suppose.
Are you a very organised person, and do you have a will in place?
Don't have anything for anyone to have.
That's an excellent answer. Brilliant.
I don't think anyone wants one half of a Hoover, which is, you know,
just a half a Hoover. That's all you've got.
No, don't tell Dave that. I hope Dave's ears are covered.
Yeah. And what about if you haven't got a will, have you got anything, or have you expressed your wishes when you depart this plane? As in, do you know if you want to be buried, cremated? Have you made those wishes clear to anybody? Because as we know, planning a funeral is challenging if there's no guidelines.
Yeah, it's a really good question. When I was younger, I was convinced. There's a song by a band called Anthony and the Johnsons, and the song is called Hope There's Someone. And it is deeply painful. And I was like, I just want that to be played. And I want everyone to feel the pain and the sorrow. I want everyone to be absolutely heartbroken that I'm not there anymore. And to be honest, I don't mind what anyone plays at my funeral. I understand the pain of arranging a funeral. For me, I don't have any final requests. I don't, you know, if anyone that I love outlives me, I hope that they'll know 3 songs to pick if they need to. You know, if they burn me, great. If they stick me in the ground hole, also fine. Whatever's the cheapest, really. I think that we get so hung up on how we might die and how we might be buried and, you know, who might turn up to our funeral, that we can often forget about how important it is to be here in the moment with the life that we have and the experiences that are in front of us.
So we've got one last question for you. If you could find out when you were going to die, would you want to know when it was going to be?
No, I just don't think there's any relevance to it. I think that it would stop me from living because I would be so concerned about when I was going to die. And, I wonder if you'd end up in a state of paralysis as a consequence. Instead of going out and enjoying yourself and living, you'd end up in this kind of like, I don't know what to do with myself because I know exactly when I'm going to die.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning into It's a Death Sentence. Please keep listening to our weekly episodes.
And if you like our show, please like, share and subscribe.
We are dying to talk to you.